Meet Sam Tima, the author of Holistic Career Development, Coaching and Mentorship Perspective.
If I can write a book where I address one of the 3 key pillars of coaching, which is perspective, you will be able to be comfortable to be coached by me because you know my story. That was really that. Secondly, most of us and our fellow coaches here, the coaching books that we read in our colleges are not written in our context. Every now and then when we go to international coaching conferences, we are always told to bring the African stories. And then we come back and we do nothing, we meet again. And then I realized that I'm actually not just an author by the way I've entered the academic world. I work with leaders at business schools.
When Sam Tima returned from Germany, where he studied and obtained a diploma in mastering the German language, amongst other skills, he started his own organization, Kometa, in 1997 as a soccer club in Hillbrow, Johannesburg. He was then working for one of the biggest banks in South Africa. He organized young people with a drive to play soccer and helped them reach beyond their ambition of playing the sport through workshops and helping them with their schoolwork.
If you follow my life history, especially the transitions that I write about in the book, because the whole book is about transitions. I don't know whether you picked it up. Transition from one state to another and every time meeting a challenge. At every point of my transitions, there's always been soccer featuring in. And when I reflect back, I realize that this thing started from that village. Every time I try to avoid it, it keeps on coming. And I think it shows how the impact of what you do when you are that young, it stays with you. Those who study psychology, you read about transactional analysis, the adult child, the things that emerge later. And that's why I say that I had to bring this thing here in because I discovered later in my life that so many winning formulas in life were informed by that. But growing up, and it's not just football, it's village football. But there's really a huge difference between the football we talk about.
What makes village football different?
It is so integral to the culture, to your village, or your traditional. The parents are so much part of it. In our Muribani, we're such a small village. In many cases, if we go away on a football game and there is a wedding, it's not going to be happening. There's a chapter in this book that I'm emotional about it, and it's called The Child of the Village. When you grow up in these villages in Africa, there is this strong belief that as a child you are born into a family, but you belong to the village. Every elder in that village is your parent. You will not misbehave thinking that your mother and your father or uncle is not here. Because if you do something wrong, they will reprimand me, and if you go home crying, they will hit you even harder. But it was out of love. So the fond memories of growing up in the village, knowing very well that you are in good hands of every elder in that village, is what sticks with me. And I believe that in our companies, we are a community and we are a village. And if we can have leaders that behave in a way that every employee sees them as their leaders, and we feel that communal way of living, we will achieve a lot. So that's something that every time I think of, I remember my childhood upbringing. It was really not fake, it was real. Even when I go there, my childhood name is Wagofihla, which means the one who has arrived. But actually they call me Mpihlane, and when somebody calls me Mpihlane in that village, I know they're in a loving mode. Because it's like, they're praising you. And that experience is, for me, it stays with me.
In this book, Sam Tima delivers his readers with so much feel and finesse. It's a book so rich with academic, corporate, structural, and cultural areas for a reader to explore as one expedites from page to page. In the foreword, Mrs. Lindiwe Sangweni Sido, Chief Operating Officer of City Lodge Hotel Group, describes the book as a gift to many of us who are still in search of reaching personal and professional perspective, purpose, and self-actualization. Each chapter gives a glimpse of personal and corporate journey the author has traveled. Bears all the brunt and blaze of growing up physically, mentally, and intellectually. With almost 2,000 coaching sessions under his name, Sam Zima subsidizes the African context to the international coaching and mentorship profession.
The African Lekgotla way of managing meetings, which Lekgotla is the spelling name, but in Tswana they call it Kgotla, it's the same thing. I'm sure many of you have observed in the rural villages whenever there are events, elders sitting under a tree in a cycle and talking, and it will be so quiet as if nothing is happening. And there'll be one person talking, and then after that person finishes, another one talks. And if you go deeper into the Lekgotla, it's really a very powerful way of engaging the communities. And that's why in Speli, there's no issue, a problem, or a challenge that can never be handled. And you'll hear people say, hey, which means literally, this particular issue requires men in their jackets and women in their blankets. Because they had a system that they will contain however complicated the situation was. And I grew up observing this. And when I then go into management, you get to hear about things like Nancy Klein's time to think. You get to hear about the World Cafe methodology we use to facilitate complex sittings, brainstorming. And I realized about these things, we do it. This is what Lekgotla is. Because in Lekgotla, everybody's given time to talk, and you don't intervene until a person has finished the thought process. And when your time comes, if you are required to respond to that person's thought process, you don't bring a new thought. The chairperson will say, bring my induk. Because you are disrespectful to the person's point. You want to move on to another point, and you haven't really heard the other point. And there's equality, and there is dignity, and there is respect, and you don't even know who's chairing the meeting. And that's the beauty about it, because in a modern way of managing meetings, you will see without even people arriving, there's a big chair in front of the boardroom. You know that's where the head is going to sit. Already you want to sit away from the, not in the Lekgotla. The Lekgotla setup is equality number one, and at the end, maybe you will have the opportunity of a leader of the meeting coming and summing up and say, I endorse that decision, or even ruling out and say, we agree to disagree. So yeah, that is really for me the fascination, but I've then developed a manual. That's what and you see in the chapter where I moved from African around the crawler to a boardroom. So in a boardroom, this is really a transformation. If you bring it and ultimately don't need it, that's what happens.
Here, Sam Zima explains his intuition to always making a difference to all nearby and far-flung corners of the world.
If I ask you, any one of us, if you are African, who of you has never been brought up by somebody who's not a biological father or biological mother? Or who haven't experienced a family where there's always somebody that is not really from the family but is looked up. But let's bring it closer to your own family. My late uncle, who was Dominic Bajana's father, always said that yeah? If you run away from responsibility, you're going to fall into it. So if you have a fellow brother that is requiring a support from you and you don't support them, later down the road, when he gets stuck, you'll still be the one to face it. And I think that for me, it doesn't mean that you are stuck with this responsibility. We are saying that you have to take people past certain stages. That's mentoring. Mentoring might mean that you might get your Muchana to come and spend 6 months with you, but after that 6 months, you've shown them the way and then they will go. It's not a punishment. And if you are not the one able to do it, somebody in the family will be able to do it. The only problem is when you think you are the only one and then you can't reach out to other family members to help you. Then you have a problem because now you want to be the one.
It's really about sharing.
It's about sharing the responsibility and